the Alexander the Great podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Faye Edwards, and this is episode 1.4, 7 contenders, only 1 winner, how Alexander the Great became king of Macedon. It's tempting to assume, especially if you've been traumatised by medieval English history, that the reason Alexander the Great became king is because he was the firstborn son. But absolutely not. You see, when King Philip II died, there were no fewer than 7 rival claimants to the throne. This situation was caused by 2 quirks of ancient Macedonia. Quirk 1. Philip was polygamous. That is, he had multiple wives, 7 in total as we heard in episode 1. And this means he had multiple children, including multiple sons from different wives. Now, polygamy was traditional for Macedonian kings, and while it neatly sidestepped Henry VIII's problem of having to behead wives that weren't birthing sons, it gave them a whole new headache, because it created rival contenders for the throne who could be backed by different powerful players in the Macedonian court. The upshot was that whenever a Macedonian king died, there was a scramble for succession, and that's putting it mildly. Quirk 2 was that Macedonian royal succession did not follow strict primogeniture. That is, the throne did not always pass to the firstborn son. Don't get excited, feminists, it never passed to a lowly woman. But it did sometimes skip the firstborn son to land on another male heir of royal blood, who was better equipped to lead the army in battle. Say goodbye to the baby kings of medieval England and the mad glass kings of medieval France. Indeed, the army was so important in ancient Macedon that the new king was chosen by them in a formal assembly, in which the suggested successor was presented, and they signalled their acceptance by cheering and clashing their weapons against their shields. Once this had been done, the army were legally bound to the new king. While our ancient sources don't tell us about it, I've done my best to dramatise Alexander's acclamation by the army as accurately as possible in episode 1. OK, so we know Philip had multiple children with multiple wives, and that there's no strict line of inheritance to the firstborn son. It's no surprise then that Alexander and his mother Olympias may have been jittery about Philip's marriage to wife number 7, and its potential to derail Alexander's claim to the kingdom. Indeed, when Philip dies, there are, as I said, 7 possible contenders for the throne. Let's count them down. Claimant 7. This is Philip's firstborn son. No, not Alexander, but his elder half-brother Arrhidaeus. Arrhidaeus' mother is Philip's 3rd wife, a dancing woman, quote-unquote, from Larissa, which is a Greek city-state. Here's what Plutarch has to say about the matter. Arrhidaeus was Philip's son by an obscure and common woman named Philena. Do you get the impression he doesn't like her? And he was deficient in intellect owing to bodily disease. Interestingly, Plutarch and some other sources blame Arrhidaeus' intellectual deficiency on Alexander's mother Olympias. Plutarch continues that this deficiency did not come upon him in the course of nature or of its own accord. Indeed, it is said that as a boy he displayed an exceedingly gifted and noble disposition, but afterwards Olympias gave him drugs which injured his body and ruined his mind. More on that in episode 2.2. By Plutarch's account, there are 2 major things wrong with Arrhidaeus as a successor. First, his mum isn't royal, and second, he has learning disabilities. That is a serious setback when you're expected to lead your soldiers from the front. For these reasons, Arrhidaeus isn't a real contender for the throne. At this point anyway, we'll need a whole other season to find out how on earth he became king after Alexander's death. Interestingly, while Alexander kills every other rival and their supporters to secure his position as king, he doesn't kill Arrhidaeus. Does this reveal a soft spot for his brother? Quite possibly. The two were very close in age and grew up together in the cultural centre of Macedon, a city called Pella, and there seems to have been real affection between the brothers. It warms the cockles, doesn't it? So that's claimant 7 and he's out. Claimant 6 is Alexander's cousin Amyntas. Unlike Aridaeus, he's a real threat to Alexander. This is because he's the son of the previous king, Perdiccas III of Macedon. Perdiccas was Philip II's elder brother, making him Alexander's uncle. For a family tree to help you visualise all this, check out my Alexander the Great Ultimate Starter Pack. Link in episode description. In short, Alexander's cousin Amyntas was the king's firstborn son when he died in battle. But the crown didn't pass to him because he was a child, and as we know in the ancient warrior kingdom of Macedon, a child king is about as useful as a sword made of cheese. So, instead, the king's brother, Philip II, Alexander's dad, took the throne. But that was then, and this is now. It's 25 years later, and Amyntas is now very much an adult who may have commanded troops and who has a marital alliance with Philip II's household by being married to Philip's daughter Kainene, Alexander's half-sister. All this means that Amyntas has a strong claim to the throne, but he's not fast enough to get people on his side, and soon Alexander will have him executed to make sure it stays that way. We'll find out more about that in episode 2. So that's claimant 6, close but no cigar. Claimant 5 is Philip's most recent child, born to his 7th and final wife, the young and, importantly, Macedonian Cleopatra. Say it with me, not that Cleopatra! This, then, is Alexander's younger, full-blood Macedonian half-sibling. Now, there are some members of the Macedonian court who would see this child as Philip's only truly legitimate heir, because all his other kids are only half Macedonian, and that includes Alexander. This goes back to that "hope this union brings you legitimate heirs to the throne" wedding speech from the diabolical General Attalus. Go back and listen to episode 1 if you haven't already. However, we know very little about this child. Our sources are even unclear on whether the child is a boy called Carinus or a girl called Europa, or whether there's 2 children, a boy and a girl. What we can say is that in either case, the kid or kids are very young. We're talking still playing with rattles young. So again, they ain't the battle-ready monarchs the Macedonians are looking for. Nonetheless, they could still pose a threat to Alexander as they grow up. The boy directly as a rival claimant himself, and the girl indirectly by marrying a Macedonian aristocrat and having fully Macedonian offspring who have royal blood, thereby creating a rival royal line. Although this is a long way off, Alexander isn't taking any chances. In the bloodbath that follows his father's assassination, Cleopatra and her baby are swiftly executed. Those warm cockles are cooling off a bit now, aren't they? In most accounts, it's not Alexander, but his mother Olympias who does the killing. And here's where things go from messy succession to diabolically unhinged, because some sources tell us she killed them by roasting them over an ancient bronze barbecue. After Philip's death, his infant son, born to Cleopatra, the niece of Attalus, was seized along with his mother by Olympias and roasted alive over a bronze vessel. While other sources tell of forced suicide. She forced Cleopatra, the woman for whom she had been set aside, to hang herself after first killing her child in her arms, and took satisfaction in the suffering she inflicted. Professor Ian Worthington talks about some of this in episode 1.3. But was it really Olympias who killed them? After all, Alexander is not exactly shy with the sword. And if it really was Olympias, are the gruesome details true? Or is this just our ancient misogynist sources casting shade on a powerful woman who needs to be put in her place? We'll get into all this when we talk all things Olympias in episode 2.2. To be 100% sure none of this is coming back to bite him in the ass, Alexander has General Attalus, uncle of poor hanged or roasted Cleopatra, executed, without trial, even though he says he'll be a good boy. He ain't laughing about legitimate heirs now, is he, eh? That'll learn him. So that's claimant 5 and their entire family wiped out. On to claimants 4, 3 and 2. These are the Lyncestian brothers mentioned in episode 1. While they're not relatives of Alexander, they come from a noble family with ties to Upper Macedonian royalty. Straight after Philip's murder, they're accused of choreographing the whole thing in an attempt to seize the throne for themselves. 2 are executed immediately. No trial, no fuss. Some fast footwork means the third brother survives. Though he was implicated in the murder of Philip, Alexander let him off, since he had been one of the first of his friends to salute him as king on Philip's death, and had put on his breastplate and accompanied him to the palace. But, and who could have predicted this? A couple of years later, brother number 3 is caught plotting with Persia, and Alexander decides better late than never, and claimant 2 is bumped off. So that's 6 contenders down and 1 to go. The winner is Alexander the Great, and here are the reasons he comes out on top. First, he's 20 when his father dies, so he beats Cleopatra's kids by virtue of being an adult. Check. Second, he's also Philip's son by a princess, so he beats his half-brother by having royal blood on both sides. Double check. Third, he also beats his half-brother by having his wits about him. Triple check. Fourth, as Philip's son, Alexander has Argead royal blood. This is the royal house of Macedon who claim descent from Heracles, aka Hercules, same hero. Thus, he beats all 3 Lyncestian brothers who aren't of this line. Check, check, check. Fifth, Alexander is a strong military commander. At 16, he was giving the northern tribes a good old mashing in his father's absence. And at 18, he was wiping out the formidable, homosexual, sacred band of Thebes. Go back to episode 1.2 if you want to hear more about them. While our sources don't tell us, I'm betting all this eclipsed his cousin Amyntas. Don't feel bad, Amyntas, he'd eclipse most of us too. Frankly, it's already game over at this point. But if we need another reason to back the Alexander horse, Philip did things that denoted Alexander as his recognised heir. And this means a lot, because the Macedonian old guard are nothing if not loyal to Philip. Indeed, this will get some of them into deep water later. Keep an ear out for that in a few episodes' time. So, what sort of things did Philip do? Well, he left Alexander to rule as regent while he was away. He trusted him to command a flank of the Macedonian army at the Battle of Chaeronea. He had him educated by the leading philosopher of the day, Aristotle. And after their victory at Chaeronea, he built a monument featuring ornate statues of himself, Olympias and Alexander. Effectively, a public declaration that Alexander was next in line for the throne. All this may be why Antipater, one of Philip's most trusted statesmen, immediately declares Alexander king upon his father's death. He's gonna regret that later, folks, so stay tuned. Ultimately, though, Alexander's the winner. He takes the crown and eliminates anyone who might stand in his way. Is he ruthless? Absolutely. But in ancient Macedon, that's not a flaw. It's the height of practicality. Oh, hang on a minute. There's a revolt brewing. Those pesky Greeks think they can get the better of the young king. Want to see how that goes? Join me next time on episode 2, Poetic Justice for Revolting Thebes. Want to let me know your thoughts? You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube and Facebook as Alexander the Great Podcast. You can also visit alexanderthegreatpodcast.com and email alexanderthegreatpodcast@gmail.com.